For a long time, I did place so much value on my work. I thought, oh, how successful I am in work. It displays the value I have in the world. And no wonder why I burned out. Because when you put all of your worth and value into something like that, it's just soul sucking. You forget that you're so much more than that. Those nights where when I first started my business, I would literally work from the couch until 9 or 10 p.m., completely exhausted out of my mind. But I thought, oh, you just have to keep going. You have to keep going. And I wasn't enjoying life as much as I was before. And that was no way to live. My name is Francesca Phillips, and you're listening to the Good Space Podcast, a show where we help you find peace and power in work, relationships, and intuition. Hey, and welcome to another episode on the Good Space Podcast. Today, I want to talk about ambition, how hustle culture is dead. So does that mean our drive went away, or did it morph into something new? This is a developing journey and lesson in my own life. So I am going to share with you things that I'm learning at this moment. But of course, it's an ever-evolving, growing process. And if you have any thoughts on this topic, please reach out to me on Instagram or email me. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. To take a page from an article by Anne Friedman, she said that women are in the midst of a revolutionary reckoning with our ambitions. And boy, am I in the middle of my own reckoning. And if you are too, then this episode is for you. In a recent interview I did with Stephanie Sellers, she said the best way to remove implicit biases against women is to live our own experiences, to own and claim them outside of any male or voices in general that tells us how we need to experience the world. And this episode is my way of living my experience with ambition, of opting out of the way the world says I need to consume and digest ambition, and of talking in real time about what I'm processing with the hope that you feel some inspiration when it comes to your own relationship with ambition too. As a new mom, my idea of what's important changed over the last year. I'm feeling my self-made walls of ambition crumbling down, both a terrifying and liberating experience. It all happened when my therapist a few months ago asked why I was afraid to accept the reality of where my life was at, and then this reckoning began. She made me realize I was holding on to a way of thinking and working that no longer fit my season of life, yet I kept clinging to and wanting to go back to my ambition and what I knew it to be. So I'll share a little bit about what I knew it to be. Growing up, I always felt like I was meant for something bigger than myself. I had a natural talent and passion for songwriting and singing and was obsessed with it for most of my youth and teenage years. This led me to move to Los Angeles after high school, network like crazy for a year, and then land my first job in music at Rock Mafia Records. Then from there, working with a big music manager and famous singers and bands. After 6.5 years, though, I burned out and didn't want the lifestyle music offered. It was a really big blow because I had dreamed so long of making a name for myself in music, using my talents. I got pretty high up to a point where I could have picked the direction that I wanted to go. So why do I want to step away? Why does this feel like the best move? And I had a lot of anger, resentment to work through. When I stepped away, I took a temp job in marketing. And then 6 months after that, I moved to Zurich for my husband's job. Looking back, it's probably better that it happened that way because I don't know where our life would be if I still wanted to be in music and that opportunity to go to Europe came up. I think it would have been harder to leave it. So it was kind of nice that I had a little break. But regardless, that time period was peak ambition for me. I had this constant burning fire, a feeling I've chased ever since. I knew what I wanted. I went after what I wanted. I had the network. I had the group. It was just this constant morphing momentum that kept growing. And seeing what I was able to accomplish fueled me. So I kept thinking, why can't I replicate that ambition anymore? What's wrong with me? I ended up diminishing where I was in my life because my sense of ambition and accomplishment didn't match that time in music. I wanted it to feel the same. I wanted to be drawn and driven the same way. I felt down and sometimes worthless because it wasn't. And maybe I believed if I didn't feel obsessed and on fire, then I was failing or it wasn't worth pursuing. Very all or nothing thinking for sure. And what I didn't understand at the time is that ambition isn't meant to be sustainable. A career or body of creative work is built over a sustained period of time with starts and stops and growth, but I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept that that's the way it flowed. And this is why. Until recently, society very much glorified the hustle and grind model. If I wasn't constantly busy, then I'm lazy. If I'm not writing down goals for each week, month, quarter, and year, then I'm unproductive. I know I'm not alone in this. Anne Friedman says what's happening now is a restlessness, a searching, a wholesale re-examination of the role that work should play in a woman's life and identity. Of course, for some women, finding fulfillment in work isn't even an option. They have to put food on the table and work is a necessity. So this new thought on ambition is a more recent development for those who get paid a salary with benefits, who believe they could advance feminism alongside their careers, and even for women who maybe you have a second income and there's not as much pressure on you to have a traditional career, but you want to have your own business or like you are in a non-traditional path, if that makes sense. Regardless, we're beginning to dismantle what ambition means and how it shows up in life. It's not us that's the problem, but the environment, the societal mindset, the collective mindset. I don't want to feel like I have to contort, trim, or lessen who I am to fit this idea the world presents to me. So I'm opting out. I've decided to demolish ideas and beliefs and rebuilding one brick at a time, changing the question I have around ambition. And that question is, does ambition have a place in my life if it's not the hustle and grind way? So let's talk about this. So there's a difference between meaningful versus validating ambition. In the same article I quoted earlier, the author shared an idea from the book All the Gold Stars by Rainsford Stauffer. Stauffer makes a distinction between ambition that is rooted in personal meaning and ambition that is about proving external worth. Meaningful ambition often centers on things like community and creativity, with goals that feel connected, whole, and healthy. It typically doesn't come with that pressure cooker sensation of, oh my God, I'm falling behind. I'm the only one who isn't doing enough. I thought that was a really profound insight on ambition, that there can be two different ways it can manifest. When ambition is rooted in personal meaning, it feels connected, whole, and healthy. It's centered on things like community and creativity. Whereas when ambition is rooted in proving external worth, you feel the pressure cooker sensation. It's that masculine energy, right? Of go, 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 create, pursue, force, do all these things. I'm falling behind. There's some timeline out there that everyone has to follow. And if I'm not following it, then I'm behind, which sounds so silly as I say this out loud, but I truly have believed that. Oh, there's some timeline that everyone has to follow, but that's a lie. When that feeling of not doing enough kicks in, this is when it's important to have a clear idea of what matters most. I realized I couldn't do everything before having a baby. So even before I had a little human to take care of, I knew I couldn't do everything. But it's even more true now that I do have one. There are millions of options out there for me and for you. But a good life means I have to hone the gift of discernment, be picky, be choosy. So I started asking myself, okay, what can I delegate? What do I need to leave in the sink or on the floor? What can I let go of? And this is where having my therapist really helped. And I don't think anyone can truly do this work without support. At least for me, you get so used to your life, to your thoughts, to your routines and habits that sometimes it's hard to shine that light and have the objectiveness that is needed to know what change needs to happen. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a friend or family member. But I think having these conversations to figure out, okay, where is this push and pull happening in my life? And how can I ease that pressure and that push and pull? It's one thing to realize that you want to shift your career or goals in a more purposeful and meaningful way. And it's another thing altogether to figure out what it actually takes to do it. Action and ideation and theory are completely different things. Friedman says, for ambition to be sustainable, it has to be personal and complex, not just about rising through the ranks. For every woman who's burned out after placing too much value on work as a key component for her identity, the task isn't letting go of ambition altogether. It's relocating those ambitions beyond the traditional markers of money, title, and professional recognition. Ambition does not have to be limited to a quest for power at the expense of yourself and others. It can also be a drive for a more just world, a healthier self, a stronger community, and it's definitely achievable in soft pants, end quote. Ooh, very powerful. Definitely something I felt seen and heard in, because for a long time, I did place so much value on my work. I thought, ooh, how successful I am in work. It displays the value I have in the world. And no wonder why I burned out, because when you put all of your worth and value into something like that, it's just soul-sucking and it doesn't feel good. And you forget that you're so much more than that. And I love how she says that ambition doesn't have to be limited to a quest for power at the expense of yourself and others. That just reminded me of those nights where when I first started my business, I would literally work from the couch until 9 or 10 p.m., completely exhausted out of my mind. But I thought, oh, you just have to keep going. You have to keep going. And I wasn't enjoying life as much as I was before. And that was no way to live. And thankfully, I knew it wasn't sustainable and changed it. But man, it was brutal. And I know there's so many people out there who work themselves to the bone like that too. I know my husband does. He works at a job that's very demanding, and because of what he gets paid, they own you essentially, and it's burning him out too. And we know that he needs to make some adjustments, and we're working on it. But man, it's no joke, the pressure that the world puts on us to work and value ourselves based on our work. So I want to talk about some other ideas that I've come across involving ambition, or ideas that I used to have that I've now dismantled and opted out of. So here we go. This first one you probably have heard of time and time again. If you work harder, you earn more. Working harder means more money. Already, this saying is problematic. Throw in there, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps too, which we'll talk more on later. But this becomes problematic because when I think of people who work hard, I think of people like waiters, single parents. I'm sure there's a handful of others, but that's what comes to mind initially. So waiters and single parents to me work harder than most. The raw amount of hours, the physical labor demanded of them, they work harder than most. Yet I don't see their sheer amount of hard work making them millionaires or having the luxury of time freedom. There's a lot more that influences those outcomes than just hard work. It's not enough to trade your time for money. This made me realize as well, where or what you work in matters. There's a path and earnings cap for almost any industry or job. Someone who works in fast food probably has a lower cap on what they can make and the possibilities they have versus a real estate mogul or certain entrepreneurs or even a doctor or other career paths. So yes, working harder, you can earn more, but it also depends on your opportunity, your education, the actual path that you want to take, all of these other factors. It's not just a literal standalone principle that will work for everyone. And so that kind of goes into the next thought of that depends on what you work hard on, right? Because a lot of times when we work hard on something and it doesn't actually get the needle moving or actually give us the result we want, then it's not earning us more. Someone like Kim Kardashian and Taylor Swift, they work hard, yes, but not on doing the laundry or cleaning the house or running errands. They have the privilege of putting the energy they do have toward only the things that move the needle. The obstacles that stand in their way of executing their highest creative savvy selves are far less than most average people. They literally delegate everything. So Taylor Swift, for example, literally delegates everything except for songwriting and like the things that she's personally passionate about. So her hard work earns her more money. So this made me take a mini inventory as a thought exercise, because clearly I'm not Taylor Swift and I'm not Kim Kardashian. I don't have the resources that they do. So how can we extrapolate kind of how they're able to make their hard work earn more into an average person's life, right? I thought, okay, what obstacles, quotes in quotes, are in my life that stop me from fully leaning into my creative endeavors? And then I asked, okay, so what would it actually take for me to accomplish my biggest ambitions? Then I asked, what would it actually take for me to accomplish my biggest ambitions? Would I or could I delegate to remove those obstacles? And the answer I got is that my highest ambition isn't feasible in this season of life. Because when it comes down to it, yeah, I could put my daughter in daycare or find a way to pay a nanny full time. We do have part-time help. But if I really wanted to give this 100% in the good space, then I would hire someone full time, or I would put her in daycare full time. And I thought, but I don't want to. And I have the luxury of saying that I don't want to. I would love to see my daughter more than someone else. And that's not to say someone who thinks differently and is fine putting their kids in someone else's hands is a bad thing. No, it's not. And that's not to say that if you're not able to financially to have the childcare options that you want, which, let's be real, America's childcare system, whole other conversation, but that's just my personal thing that I realized I wanted because of this question. And so I thought, wow, okay, the fact that I want to cherish as much time as I can right now when my daughter's this young tells me a lot. And it tells me that this season of life is not suited for my most maximum ambition, which is fine. Like, my season of life just can't contain it. So if that's the case, what ambition would fit the life that I want? How can I adjust to make the ambition more palatable? The information you're hearing is what I wrote for our daily email, The Good Space Daily. So if you're already signed up, you'll have these tips in writing in your inbox. And if you're not already signed up and you're listening to this after the fact of us dripping them out live, we'll make it so that when you sign up, you can specifically ask for these emails and get them dripped out to you when you sign up. And that's the same with all the other topics and themes that we'll be covering for Feeling Your Best. So if you want to get these short daily reminders to access your authentic self in all areas of life and get resources, chances to win things, all of the good stuff, then make sure to sign up now. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to findyourgoodspace.com. This was really hard for me because I felt like my therapist had to remind me multiple times, like, oh, I hear that you want to achieve this with the good space, but do you think that's realistic with the time that you can give it? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not realistic. Like, in order to really give it everything that I want for this goal of mine, I'd have to do this, this, and this. And like, two of them, it's not feasible right now, this moment. And then the other part, I just don't want to give up more time with my daughter. So I was like, wow, that was a big, big reality check. So I realized, okay, I'm here to make progress and encourage myself, not set myself up for failure. So I need to accept the reality as it is and have compassion to adjust my ambition to fit my season of life. So now my thinking has turned into this. As someone who doesn't have the resources or teams that ultra wealthy, successful people have right now, what is worth the energy and resources that I have? How can I cut to the chase here and only focus on what matters? And the funny thing is, I think learning the answer to this on what actually matters will help me manage success and ambition in the future, because I won't be afraid to simplify and delegate the rest by focusing actually on what matters. And right now I'm learning it in a much lower stake environment. So another saying that I've had to dismantle and question and call out is the concept of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. So again, I've already discussed a lot about privileges and advantages from the examples I've given before. And as I've grown, I realize how every little advantage matters. Even when we don't think it does, it does. I bet if two equally ambitious and driven people started pursuing their passion at the same time, but one had parental support financially and emotionally, they didn't have to get a typical job, they ate well, etc. Their only focus was practicing, creating, and networking. So let's say 80% of their energy goes purely towards this passion. Whereas the other person doesn't have the same family support. They have to work two jobs to make ends meet and cobble things together to meet their basic needs. Their passion can't be their main focus. So let's say 40% of their energy goes towards their passion. You'll quickly see one advancing faster and larger than the other. And I bet you can guess which one. So I have a problem with pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps because you have to take into account the starting line for those people, for every person. And a lot of people will start at a much easier height. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the analogy. Like, I don't know. They just start at a better place than other people. And so for me, looking at Taylor Swift or something, like, it's not fair to me to be like, oh, Francesca, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, I didn't have the financial support that she did with her parents. You know, like, there's so many things I could list. And then there's people who didn't even have the advantages that I did growing up. I had a pretty privileged life compared to most. And so I think it's a very harmful statement to use when not taking into account someone's starting point or resources or network or all of those things. And yes, of course, like, everyone can have a chance to create their own success and do their own things, but I just don't think it's helpful mental health wise, to make everyone think that they can just do it without putting into account the different starting points. So, which brings me to another one that I have definitely pushed up against and am trying to dismantle, not only for myself, but in the mental health space as well, is you're failing because of your mindset and energy. The toxic positivity used in MLMs, this is used in the spiritual world, everywhere, that you're failing because of your mindset and energy. Yes, mindset and energy in a person matters, but it's not the only thing that influences the life someone has or who they are as a person. By having someone think that their mindset and energy is the only thing that's stopping them, deflects from systemic issues or opportunity issues or other things that actually are pulling that person down. So we have to stop thinking that one sliver of the whole defines the rest and that it's our fault we're not where we want to be. However, can we drastically change our lives if mindset and focus is the main reason we find ourselves in a situation? Yes, if that's the main reason. Like, if everything else in our life is in a good spot, or we have the chance to have opportunity or all these things, and the only thing holding us back is our belief in ourselves, then sure, absolutely, like, mindset and energy matters. I just also don't want people to think that's the only reason, especially if someone's been working at something for like decades and they've been having good energy and mindset, but they're not getting a result or whatever. It would be very heartbreaking and discouraging to that person to think that they're just not good enough to make the results happen. And that's not the case. There are circumstances and seasons we find ourselves in that affect the reality of our lives, and a lot of them are not in our control. So, for example, I'm a new mom. It's been a wonderful spiritual transformation, but also a tough transition. I literally do not have the same 24 hours as someone like Taylor Swift or even a single woman. My time of necessity involves caring for this little human. And unless I delegate every task involved in taking care of my daughter, I don't have the same energetic capacity or hours to put towards my work as a Taylor Swift or even a single woman. And it doesn't matter how my mindset or energy is. It won't magically make that reality disappear. So instead, I have to accept my reality and see what can I do. Like, that's a mindset and energy tweak that I can do, is not resisting or fighting or trying to change that reality, but being like, okay, what is the good here? How can I tweak my ambition to work within the season of my life and love it and accept it? And that's okay that I'm not in the same place as someone else. And a lot of times we probably wouldn't want to be in the same place as someone else. And to point out again, there are systems all around us that make it easier or harder to get certain results in society, for sure. Even in our businesses and daily lives, if we have a poor home system or business system, then everything feels draining, discouraging, and overwhelming. If we started in an economic status that makes the people, opportunities, and access to education a certain level, then that affects the starting place of that person. And yes, people in poverty can make a better life. Wayne Dyer was raised in an orphanage. He managed to go to school, get his PhD in psychology, and live his passion on a huge scale. So it's not to say that your starting point dooms you. I just think we need to have more compassion and understanding of the complexity. You're not failing because of your mindset and energy. So I have 2 more ideas that I want to dismantle. One is that work has to be your whole life. It's okay if work is just that. Work. Remove the pressure. Release that pressure. I realized that my joy comes from creating and being present with my family, that no amount of money to me is worth not having that freedom. The only way I want to make a ton of money is my way, is in a balanced and connected way. Otherwise, I don't want it. And of course, if necessity calls for it, work. Like you have to work, you have to put food on the table, and then shut off. Like allow yourself to disconnect from it. Remove pressure to like be or do something that doesn't align with who you are, and truly just fill your life with what gives you joy as often as possible. It's another thing I realized is that through the pressure I put on myself to have ambition, I often would withhold things that gave me inspiration because it's not getting me closer to the goal. It's not getting me closer to my ambition. But then I realized I actually am more inspired and happy in my work when I let myself just be and I let myself feel surrounded by what inspires me, and that's connecting with people. I'm a very social person. I love people, connecting with other women founders. That gives me inspiration. Reading books, that gives me inspiration. Laughing with my daughter, that gives me inspiration. So work does not have to be my whole life. And even if by necessity you have to work, you listening to this right now, it doesn't have to be your whole mind either. So like even if you physically have to be there or have to work a certain amount of hours, it doesn't have to take any other mental energy outside of the hours that you're working. So that's even a good place to start. So the next idea that I'm dismantling and relearning is that ambition only applies to money and power. I'm learning that nope, it does not. We can have ambitions in other avenues too, in relationships, health, and even ambitions to not work. The sky is really the limit. And as I wrote that section, it really became clear to me that I think we often forget, I often forget that our divinity, our souls, who we truly are is more expansive and complex and large and beautiful than the limiting definition of ambition. I'm learning that changing what ambition means to me actually gives me more hope and possibility, and I'm not trying to just stuff what my soul is trying to call me to into this narrow definition, and that's the most freeing feeling I have felt in a long time. If you like what you're hearing so far and feel inspired or changed or just motivated after hearing this message, please consider joining our membership. We work so hard to dissect information and make it simple and digestible for you so you can go out in the world and be a light, connect to your authentic self. And we really want to continue being that landing place for you. So if you're considering even one message or brand to support, we hope that you'll consider ours. And if you want a link for that, it is in the show notes. Now it's time for an affirmation. I'm ambitious in the unfolding of my truest natural life. I walk toward my ambitions through laughter and inspiration. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode or an awesome manifesting story you want to share,
give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.